We are now entering our second year of being a group around food and recipes and all our favorites. We are back in our soup era, and I am sharing in this video a compilation of all the times our soup group met and all the recipes I made, all the soups I whipped up for this group. I have all of the recipes in the description box for you and also the timestamps. This first video is the evolution of everything and shares all the details of how this group formed and what we do each month. All right, let's get into it. My friends and I have decided to start a soup club, and you're probably wondering what exactly is a soup club? Well, that's what this video is about. It's about sharing with you all the details of what it is to join and be a part of a soup club. And specifically in this video, I'm going to share the soup I'm making this month that I'm going to share with my friends at our special event. The first thing you need to start with is your jars. I purchased these from Amazon. There's a link in the description box below on these specific quart jars that have plastic lids and metal lids. You just want to make sure you have one per person in your club. So the recipe I am making for our soup, can you ever guess? You got it. Tomato soup. But what is different about this one is that I'm going to roast all the vegetables. I've seen this. It's a viral recipe. I've been wanting to make it. I have three kinds of tomatoes here. I have tomatoes on the vine. I have grape tomatoes, and I also just have your regular beefsteak tomatoes. So I'm cutting up my tomatoes. I'm just cutting them. The ones that are big, I'm cutting them in fourths, and the ones that are a little smaller, just in half. Now I have about 6 pounds of tomatoes here. The recipe calls for about 3 to 4 pounds, and I am doubling the recipe because my family is not going to let me make this much tomato soup and not have any on hand. So I know I have to double this recipe. So you'll see that this will produce 2 sheet pans, and that is because I'm thinking about my family as well as the soup club. Now let's talk about our soup club. As I chop the heads of garlic here, I just cut the tops right off because they're going to go on the sheet pan as is. So our soup club, it was totally spontaneous, and a club sounds like many members, but there's only actually 4 of us, and it was because we were at an event and we were talking about food and our love of food and cooking, and we just happened to know the weather was getting cooler. We were getting into soup season, and one of my friends just had mentioned, let's start a soup club. Let's get together. Let's do this. Let's make soup for each other. And when we leave, we all have a different type of soup to take home and freeze and share with our families. I love the idea because I don't tend to make as many soups in the winter, but I would love, and why is it that when somebody cooks, it's always better? So I love this idea, and we just kind of came together. What it took was, you know how people say, let's get together, let's do something, and it doesn't tend to happen because things get busy, and before you know it, it's days and then weeks and then months later, and you're like, remember we were gonna get together, and it just didn't happen. Well, it usually takes that one person who remembers and actually just sends a text, right? They just send a text and say, which dates work for you? Which dates can we all get together? And she picked a couple. We all decided. Then we didn't even decide which soups we were going to make. It actually worked out so perfect that we all made a different soup. Now, what I'm also putting on here is thyme sprigs, and I put a onion. So I chopped up 2 onions, and I'm spraying with my olive oil spray, and I'm putting a generous amount of sea salt on here. And yes, I do leave the stems on the tomatoes just as is. I just think it's going to add some flavor and just easier, honestly. I put it in a 425-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes, and look how beautiful they come out, completely roasted, a beautiful char, and that's what's going to give this soup that extra richness and flavor. All right, let's go ahead, strip our thyme. Let's go ahead and get this off the vine. Let's squeeze our garlic. Now we're going to take all our tomatoes, garlic, and onions, and we're going to put it into our blender. You could also do this on the stove and just simmer it in a pot and then use an immersion blender. Save the rest of this for our other portion. I'm only gonna put a little chicken broth in. There's a lot of fluid in there. Literally like 1/4 a cup at this moment. And I'm gonna keep an eye on it and see if it needs more. The soup setting can do the whole thing. It will even heat this up. The base is a heating element, so it will get up to 210, I think 220 degrees while it's pureeing the soup. So it's taking the place of putting this on the stove top and then either putting an immersion blender inside of that soup pot or having to put it into a blender anyway. I'm doing 2 things at once and we're ready to go. We're gonna get this on our soup setting. And just push the button, and actually it'll get up to 212 degrees. So I'm just getting these vegetables into my other tray, and then I'm gonna get all these juices. So I did stop it to get these juices in here. Okay, that's the flavor. Now I'm gonna get it back on to soup setting. Now it's ready. After my soup got up to temperature, which took about 20 to 30 minutes, it is now ready for the fresh basil. I added the whole leaves in, and I'm actually going to just pulse this manually and just do that for a couple of seconds. At this time, you can also add a 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream if you want it even creamier. Our soup is now complete, and we are ready to add it to our jars. I let these cool before putting on the lids, and I leave a little space on top in case they want to freeze it. I also clean around the edges to get any drips removed before I package this up. Now that it's all cooled, I am ready to package it in my insulated bag. I did decide to go with the colored lids. I thought they looked better, and I'm adding a container of sour cream so we can add a dollop of that when we get to the party. In addition to that, I also packed these cheddar cheese crisps, which I thought would be great to add to the soup when they're ready to be served. I am now ready to go to the party. All the soup group members have arrived, and we are now getting all our soups out to be sampled and shared. We decided to host alternatively at each home, so we are at our hostess's house here who's making her sausage soup. And here we have each of our jars, so remember 1 jar of each soup to each member, and then a 4th jar goes for sampling tonight. Can't wait to dig in. This is the Italian sausage soup with spinach and beans, and it is going to be served with homemade cornbread that our hostess has made from scratch. And then we're gonna sprinkle on top some Parmesan cheese, and of course we have wine to be sampled as well. With each of our soups, we provide the recipe, so each of us can make this anytime we'd like. Now it's time to dig in. Look at the cheese in this sausage Italian soup. It was so good, so delicious. Then the next soup we are tasting is a spinach and coconut soup, which has a cream base, and it was divine. Then it's on to our minestrone soup, which has the noodles and so many vegetables. Such a great hearty soup. A jar of each to take home. I cannot wait to share these with my family. And this would be the start of our soup group and a wonderful monthly tradition. The next month, a different home, a different hostess, and 4 new soups to try. The soup I'm making for soup group this month is Avegolemono. It is a Greek lemon chicken soup with orzo, and I'm starting with some avocado oil that I'm getting heated into my big pot, and I'm going to add about a cup of chopped carrots as well as about a cup of chopped celery. I'm going to coat that in the oil, and then I'm going to add a medium onion that I've also diced up, and that is my mirepoix, a carrot, celery, onion medley. I get that all coated in my oil, and I'm going to add about 4 cloves of garlic that I finely minced. To my pot, I'll add a carton of chicken broth, which is 32 ounces. And then I'll add my chicken breasts, which I cut in half as they were a little bit thick, and I will submerge them in the chicken broth. As I am tripling this recipe for soup group, I'm going to go ahead and add another 2 cups of chicken broth a little at a time. And I also need to add 4 to 5 bay leaves into the soup. I give that a quick stir to get the bay leaves in the broth, and now I would wait for it to come up to a boil. My lid doesn't quite fit on top, but I get it to a boil, and now I'm just going to stir it, and I notice it still needs a little more chicken broth. So a little bit more, and back to a boil it goes. Once it reaches to its boil, and it's been doing so for a few minutes, I'm now going to take the chicken out, and this is where I will shred it and get it all into bite-sized pieces and then put it back into the pot. I'm also taking out those bay leaves and discarding those. While the chicken is out and I'm going to be shredding it, I'm going to add my orzo to the pot. I'm going to triple this, remember, so it's 3 cups of orzo. And once I started pouring the 3 cups, I realized that was pretty much the whole box. So into the broth, the full box of orzo goes. I'm adding the rest of the chicken broth, and now we're going to do our egg mixture, which is a egg yolk and half of a lemon. I already had some freshly squeezed, so I'm going to use that up first, and then I'm going to squeeze the half of my lemon, and I'm just going to whisk that all together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to temper this because I don't want the eggs to scramble. So I'm taking some of the hot broth out of the pot and adding just a little bit at a time to the eggs, and then I'm just going to do that again, about another cup, just adding that slowly into the eggs, and that gets it up to temperature without it getting too hot where you end up with those scrambled eggs. And then I'm going to do the same slow approach, putting the egg mixture into the pot, and I can see already it's thickening up quite a bit, so I will add more water to the pot, and then I will continue adding my eggs to the broth. I've chopped up about 1/4 cup of fresh dill, which is going to balance really well, and I'm going to stir that in, and then I'm going to take a little out to sample and see how my flavors and consistency are doing. I did notice it needed a little bit more lemon juice, and also I noticed that the orzo is expanding and taking so much of that liquid, so I am going to go ahead and add more water. Not chicken broth because I don't want it to be any saltier. I'm just going to go ahead and add more water. Now, the description box will give the recipe, and that is for a normal serving. Of course, I'm doing this for the soup group, so I need a lot of soup. And on to the soup group, let's go. Our soup hostess outdid herself with her presentation, our little snacks, little things to add to our soups, our beautiful tablescape. Oh my gosh, everything is so pretty and so nice. And she even made us some homemade cornbread. It was so delicious and was the perfect thing to dunk into our soups. And our soups for the evening, to recap, were the Greek lemon orzo soup that I brought. We also enjoyed a lovely potato soup that was so rich and delightful, and then a butternut squash soup, which was creamy and had that earthy flavor. And we topped it off with some French fried onions. And then our final soup was a sausage tortellini with bacon and spinach. It was so yummy. Speaking of yummy, check out this dessert. This is the butter cookies. You find the Danish cookies in a tin. You cover the cookies with heavy whipping cream. You then put pudding on top and then cherry pie filling on top of that, and you spread whipped cream on. It was divine. The whole evening was amazing, and we leave with 3 new soups to enjoy all week. It's time for another soup group. Our next home and hostess in the rotation, and another batch of soup to whip up. The soup I'm making this time is a Reuben soup, and I'm going to start with 6 tablespoons of butter and melt that over medium-high heat. I'm going to add 2 onions. These were small onions that I've diced, and I also am adding diced celery. These are about 4 celery ribs that I'm putting in here, and I'm also going to add some minced garlic, so about 2 tablespoons from the jar of garlic, and minced garlic. And then I also had this roasted garlic that I roasted earlier, and I am going to put all the garlic cloves right into the pot as well. That's just going to add so much great flavor. As you can see, my celery and my onions are now translucent, sauteing in that butter. I've also added that roasted garlic Oh, which is giving out such a great fragrance. Let's go ahead now and add the rest of our ingredients. Our corned beef. This is our deli corned beef. I did slice it into little bitty pieces. Oh yeah. And we're gonna add our beef broth. We want a total of 8 cups of this. This is 4 cups. And then I made another 4 cups with our beef bouillon cubes. All right, we're gonna add a total of 2 cups of sauerkraut. This is like a cup and a half, a can. So I have a little more to add. Another cup here. Oh, that's looking great. Because we are serving this for soup group, which means I have to have 4 servings of it to fill my jars, so 4 jars worth, I want to add more liquid just to make sure I have enough. And because that beef broth is salty as well as the corned beef, we're just going to add water this time. So I'm going to do it right now, just another cup. Keep that to the side, keep an eye on it. We're going to turn up our heat just a little bit since there's so much liquid in here.
I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds. That's going to give it that great Reuben flavor. Next, I'm going to make my cheese sauce that I'm going to put into the soup, and it is going to be 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream with 1 ounce at a time of 4 ounces of Swiss cheese, and I'm getting that melted. Now, this was an experiment. I'm glad I did it out of the soup and just did it in a saucepan here because it did start to get grainy and a little clumpy, so I'm experimenting. So here's what I decided to do. I decided to take my 4 cups of heavy whipping cream and add them to the pot directly and let that heat through. And then I decided to keep experimenting with my cheese mixtures. These are the 2 cheese experiments we worked with. We did a smoked Gouda and an Irish cheddar. They both turned out a lot better than the Swiss cheese, but the Irish cheddar actually turned out the best. And I will probably put a couple tablespoons of that into the soup towards the end because I think stirring that in will add some richness and be really good. The Swiss cheese will reserve for the top only.
My marble rye from Aldi, the loaf of bread, is now going to become my croutons. So what I did was I just buttered them, and then we put a couple in the air fryer and also the rest on a sheet pan in the oven at 250 degrees for about 15-20 minutes.
The rye bread has so much flavor. I didn't add any seasonings to it. I just cut it up into cubes, and then I stored it in a plastic bag for when I was ready to go.
Okay, my bag of croutons ready to go with us to soup group. Perfect. It's time to fill our soup jars.
Our soups are complete. It made the perfect amount. 4 full jars of Reuben soup. So that's 1 jar for each of the soup group members, not counting myself, and 1 jar that we will sample at the party.
Ready to go to soup group.
We have arrived to our event, and check out these teacups that are going to be our little soup cups, and our soups are being put out on display for each of us to take home. And we were met with this grilled brie, and one of our friends found these 4-leaf clovers in her yard and personalized one for each of us. Love it. And check this out. The bread of the night is these gorgeous popovers. First time she's ever made them. They came out amazing, fabulous. And then check this out. Her dessert of the evening. This is a tiramisu cake from Walmart. And what she does is she takes her leftover coffee from the morning, pours that in to her dish here, adds some Kahlua as well. She will let that seep into the cake, taking it up about 10 notches, making it fabulous. We'll let that do its thing while we go and sample our soups.
First up, my Reuben soup with rye croutons and Swiss cheese. And then we had taco soup with beans and corn and tomatoes. The seasonings were perfect. It was delicious. And then it was curry tomato soup. The curry spice in this took it out of this world. Our fourth soup was this wonderful Mediterranean soup with chickpeas and sweet potatoes and garam masala to give it that deep, robust flavor. It was so yummy. And we were spoiled. We even got a fifth soup to have this night. One of our members brought a homemade strawberry soup. Oh my gosh, you guys, this soup was amazing. It was chilled and smooth and perfectly refreshing. That and the tiramisu, we were so spoiled. I loved our soups. Here they are to take home. My family was thrilled to have the soups all week.
And here's our next soup group event.
Hello and welcome to another video of Soup Group. Soup Group is four of us ladies who get together and we alternate the home in which we're having our soup. So we all get to try each other's soup. We hear about how it was made, any story that went behind it, and then we get the recipe for it. So let me share with you in this video the soup I made, which is a crab and seafood soup. And I whipped up some bread and a dessert and an appetizer. Let's get into the video. I'm going to show you my soup that I made for Soup Group.
I'm going to start by prepping my shrimp and the vegetables.
So I really like the shrimp from Sam's that's already peeled and deveined. And I just defrosted it. I'm doing about half the bag. And I'm just cutting these into little bite-sized pieces. So every sip of soup has a piece of shrimp.
Once my shrimp is all cut up, I'll set it to the side, and now I'll start on my green onions. I am going to finely chop an entire bunch. I'm also going to finely chop enough celery to end up with about a cup. I'll finely chop some flat leaf parsley, which is going to be a great garnish to top off the soup. It'll add a great contrast of color and also a nice freshness to the rich soup. And now I'm going to start my soup over medium-high heat. I'm going to melt 1 tablespoon of butter, and then I'm going to add all that shrimp that I chopped up. It will go into the pot, and it won't take very long to cook. It'll just take a minute or two. I will drizzle a little bit of olive oil to help prevent the sticking to the pot. And then once it's cooked, like I said, just a couple minutes, and then I'm going to remove it from the heat and put that to the side. Then I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter, get that completely melted, and then I'll add those vegetables, the green onions and all of the celery. Once my vegetables are softened, I will add 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to make sure that flour gets heated and cooked with the vegetables. In the meantime, I'm adding 4 cups of milk that I'm putting in a separate pot here, and I'm just trying to get my milk heated. I'm not trying to boil it. I don't want it to scorch. I'm just getting it warm so then when I add it here to the vegetables, it's not going in cold. That will help prevent lumps. So that warm milk, and you can see it's starting to thicken up, and I'll just continue to add the entire pot of milk. For seasoning, I'm going to add a generous amount of Old Bay seasoning. This is to taste, just go with your heart. And I'll also add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. I had this in the freezer where I reserved my extra tomato paste. Added that in, and you can see it starts turning to this beautiful blush color. Now I'm adding in slowly 3 cups of heavy whipping cream. This is going to give it that richness and help bulk up the volume as well. I continuously stir as I add the cream, and now I'm ready for our seafood. I have 1 can of lump crab meat here, and I'm going to dump all of that in. And now my shrimp. I am going to also add the juices of the shrimp. That's going to give it so much flavor. So I'm doing about half of the shrimp. I'm going to give it a stir, and then I do add the other half in there as well. My soup is complete. However, I felt it was not enough for the soup group. I did go ahead and do another milk mixture, 2 more cups of milk to 1 more cup of heavy whipping cream, and I also added a cup of chicken broth to thin it out. This was to ensure my soup group members had plenty of soup to take home with them. Before my soup ladies arrive, I'm whipping up these Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. And yes, it is out of a box mix. And that's because I found these at Aldi. I wanted to try them out and see how they were. And I also was going for the ease of making this. So it is super easy. It is half a block of cheddar cheese that is shredded. You just use the powdered mix from the box. And then you add 3/4 cup of water. That is it. You mix it all together and then you make 10 mounds and put it on your greased baking sheet or a piece of parchment paper, as I've done here. You put it into your 425-degree oven for 14 to 16 minutes. Once your biscuits are all cooked and beautifully browned, you will brush on your butter mixture, which is a half a stick of butter with the seasoning packet all melted together. Brush that on your hot biscuits, and that's all there is to it. It is so easy to use the box kit. These turned out delicious. The dump and go, if you're in a hurry, these are really tasty. All right, speaking of tasty, I am whipping up this appetizer. I wanted to have something for them to nibble on as they got to the house and before our soups were ready. So this is a cream cheese and goat cheese. I have a half a block of cream cheese, 2 logs of the goat cheese, so they're 4 ounces each. Got those from Aldi as well. I just stir all that until they're blended pretty well. I would probably microwave it a little to soften it so it's easier to mix, but no problem. Add it to your baking dish, smooth it all out, and I had this plum spread that I got from our local grocery store here. I think any specialty store would have a great spread, whether it's plum or apricot or any kind of fruit spread, and I just melted it in the microwave for 15 seconds just to make it easier to spread that all over my cream cheese mixture. Then I'm going to bake that in an oven 350 degrees just until it warms up, and then I'm sprinkling on chopped pistachios and mixed nuts, and then I do have some fresh thyme. I just took the leaves off the stem and just sprinkled that all about. Such an easy and tasty appetizer. The guests loved it. It was something perfect to just kind of nibble on, as well as some store-bought hummus that we just kind of picked at before our soups. Had the table all ready and it's time. Soup group ladies are arriving, and this put my little biscuits to shame. One of our members brought this homemade beautiful yeast bread. Oh my gosh, it was the perfect way to start. And we got our soups all heated, and let me tell you what everybody brought. The soups this time, we outdid ourselves. We started with this beautiful portobello mushroom soup. Oh my gosh, it was so yummy, beautifully hearty and creamy, just perfection. And then we moved on to my crab and shrimp soup. We have to sprinkle on that parsley to give it that freshness. It is a super creamy, rich, and decadent soup. Next up, we're trying our chicken chili with white beans. It is perfect. Got that salsa verde kick and the blend with the chicken. It was so tasty. And then a sausage and chicken gumbo. This one had a kick to it and it was amazing. Everything was so good. I almost forgot to give my guests their dessert, but this is something I whipped up. I've been craving this for a while. I'm going to show you how I made it. The dessert I'm making is Biscoff Tiramisu, and it starts with our espresso that we're going to use to dip our cookies into. I'll make 2 shots of the espresso and just have that drip into the bowl. I'll set that aside, and while it's cooling off, I'm going to make our Biscoff cream. So we're going to start with 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, 1/3 cup of sugar, just a teaspoon, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, good heaping tablespoon of cookie butter, 8 ounces of mascarpone cheese, my double strength Madagascar bourbon pure vanilla from Pampered Chef, teaspoon, and we're gonna mix that. Now I take 1 cookie at a time and I dunk it into the espresso, and then I break it apart and make a layer in my little trifle dishes here. And I just love them. They come in a 4 set. They are so cute, and they'll be the perfect individualized desserts. So what I do is I put the cookie on the bottom, and then I put a layer of that Biscoff cream, and then another layer of the cookie that's been dipped in the espresso. and then one more layer of cream. I did go ahead and crumble on top some of the cookies, and then I did take about 2 tablespoons of the Biscoff and just melt it in the microwave for a few seconds. And then I drizzle that on top just to give it a little more presentation and also that cookie butter flavor. I love cookie butter. I had such a craving for this that I bought myself a container, and every day I would just have a tablespoon of it. And I started to realize I can't go through this whole thing. I need to make a dessert out of it. And so that's why it was inspired to make these desserts for Soup Group.
This last Soup Group event is our most recent. And just to recap, we do soups 4 months of the year. Then we do salads 4 months of the year. And we end the year with 4 appetizer months. That's how we have decided to do it, so that we're not eating soup all year long and we get to have more variety and our menu aligns with the season. Speaking of the season, we're back into winter, and this is my next soup I'm making for our latest soup group, and it is a street corn chicken chili. I've been wanting to make this for the longest time.
We're doubling everything since it's for the group, and we're gonna start with 2 onions that I've diced up. Next, I'm adding 2 to 3 jalapenos. I have cored and seeded, and I've diced these into little pieces. I want it to be spicy, but not too spicy. Add 2 bags of frozen corn that I've defrosted on the counter. So they're defrosted. Into this, I'm going to add some salt. Cook that for about 8 to 10 minutes. Getting all that corn, all those vegetables softened. And now we're gonna add our garlic, which I have here garlic that is whole cloves I've minced, so this is fresh garlic. And I'm also gonna add a little bit of jarred garlic just to have plenty of garlic in here. I'm gonna push the corn to the sides because now we're gonna add our ground chicken. And we have 3 pounds of this. Better to have more than not enough. So 3rd package of chicken going in. So that's 3 pounds. Now I'm gonna add my spices, my paprika, my chili powder, and my ground cumin. I have about 2 to 3 tablespoons of each here. I'm just gonna dump that in. And we're gonna add more salt. And then we have a special ingredient we're going to be adding to this that I'm super excited about. Just gives it a more robust flavor. And I'll show you what that is here shortly, but let's get all of those spices mixed together here, get our chicken continuously cooking, have it cooked through, and we'll be ready to go with our liquids. So our regular batch calls for 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm gonna have to do 8 as I'm doubling. So this was frozen in my freezer, obviously, and I just defrosted it a little bit, but the rest can just kind of defrost in the soup. This is homemade chicken broth that I made from a chicken, rotisserie chicken. So I'm gonna add that and have that break down and melt in my soup. Okay, and our special ingredient is going to be beer. I'm gonna add 1.5 cups. Today we're using Step Dude, a local brewery, their little American lager here. We are going to add 1.5 cups of that delicious beer right to the mix. And now we're gonna let that get up to a boil. I'm gonna add more chicken broth. I'm gonna go ahead and add that. Okay, we'll let that get heated through. All right, we have a boil. I'm going to reduce this heat to medium now. I am going to add a tablespoon of more of the base, just for a little salty chickeny flavor, just to add that in there. All right, now I'm going to add 2 cups of sour cream. So that's this whole container. And the other thing we want to add in here is our cilantro. I chopped up a bunch of cilantro.
I'm gonna do about half of this. We're gonna keep some of this for the top when we make the soups at the event. So we'll just stir that in. Oh, that looks good. And the other thing I'm gonna add to this is lime juice, fresh lime juice.
Another ingredient I'm adding that's totally optional is this lemon lime hot sauce. I got this from Aldi. I'm just adding a couple drops in there for just a little different citrus heat. It is so good. That goes so perfectly with these flavors, and my husband loves this stuff. Now I'll fill my 4 jars, and I want to make sure they're even, so I'm going to spoon all the ingredients into the base of each jar. And I have 4 jars because I'm going to have one for each member, and then we sample one that night. So I got to make sure these are all even. I use my funnel to make sure all that wonderful liquid and broth gets into the jars, and then I top it off with the rest of the soup mix. I then am going to top it with the fresh ingredients. I am going to top it with the queso fresco. This is a crumbling cheese, so it's so perfect to just crumble and put on top. A couple of splashes of the lime lemon hot sauce. I'm going to put a couple drops of the lime lemon hot sauce on top of each, just a couple. And then I'm also going to add some lime juice, give it more freshness. I ran out of fresh limes, but I'm going to give it a little lime juice on top. And then I'm going to top it with the fresh cilantro. This is going to be so good for presentation, and also so they have those great flavors when they make this at home.
I've crumbled up all my queso fresco. I'm going to close that up. We're going to take that with us. I'm also going to take the cilantro with us, as well as some limes to freshly squeeze over the top of our soups. And I even have some soup left over for us, so I think we're ready to go.
We arrived to our soup group. We're greeted with wine, wonderful fresh bread, homemade bread. We end up sampling our soups. Tonight we are enjoying a wonderful beer and cheddar soup. We have a most decadent crab bisque. It was amazing. We also had spaghetti and meatballs soup. It was so good. And check out this dessert. This dessert was so decadent. It was brownies overload. It was a brownie homemade that was wrapped in phyllo dough, drizzled with some chocolate ganache. It is so decadent, so rich and wonderful, and really shows off how much we enjoy cooking and sharing with each other. We seem to be doing more and more each time, really tapping into our culinary expertise. I absolutely love it. I hope you did too. I hope you found inspiration. I hope you found some recipes to make, and I hope you may even consider your own soup group. Once again, my recipes are below in the description, and we are considering doing some sort of e-format or cookbook in the future. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.